Hey guys, it's me, Frederik, from the FWX podcast. I want to talk to you about a movie I saw last night, and that is this one, Conclave. And so this is a movie that was lauded at the Academy Awards, the most recent ones, and I want to talk to you more about the story and the film. And I'm gonna also uh, do this parallel with another movie that I personally love from years and years ago, and I'm talking about Angels and Demons, which has a similar kind of plot in it, but not completely, because there's another huge part of Angels and Demons that is not part of this movie. Okay, so there's no very adventure path when it comes to Conclave. But when it comes to all the papal stuff, all the clergy stuff, it is pretty similar to those kinds of things. Okay, so I have to give you the disclaimer, of course. I will be flubbing some words, I will take some weird pauses with moments. I will also swear that it's definitely gonna happen. And also, in a moment, I will look at my screen, I will start talking about the story, and I'm gonna get brighter, the screen is gonna get brighter, so that is just in preparation for that. Okay, so let's start. So, first of all, I want to talk to you briefly about Angels and Demons, because there is so much that is similar to Conclave. So, in Angels and Demons, just like in Conclave, we begin with the death of the Pope, and the preparation for the papal conclave begins. And that is where we start with Conclave 2. And in this case, in Conclave, the Pope dies of a heart attack in his bed. Well, he's presented in his bed. And so the Conclave has to start. And that falls to the Dean of the College of the Cardinals. And that person is Ralph Fiennes' character, Thomas Lawrence from the UK, who then has to convene everyone so that they can elect a successor for the Pope. And over the duration of the movie, we see four cardinals emerge as the candidates for to become the new Pope. And by the way, I also have to mention that obviously because of recent events, there being a real new Pope right now with Leo the 14th. This is very relevant to our real world too, but to how would I say this properly? Do not confuse you. I'm just gonna talk about the movie, not real life, as it has happened last week. Okay, so I'm gonna give you the three people that really start to shoot out here as the important candidates, basically the cardinal candidates. And so we start with, you gotta see that I get this right. Yes, okay. So the first person that we kind of start to know is this man. Is this man. That's Stanley Tucci's Aldo Bellini. And he's the candidate from the United States, who is more of a progressive person. Then there's another one. That is this man, Joshua Adeyemi from Nigeria, was more of a conservative. Then we also have this man right here, That is, Jovan Lithgow's character, Joseph Tremblay, was a bit more of a moderate kind of person. And then there's another person who I do not have a picture of, and that is Geoffrey Tedesco, the candidate from Italy, who is more of a traditionalist. And so the story starts off with the preparation of the papal conclave that Ralph Fiennes says Thomas Lawrence needs to conduct. And he is told by the prefect of the papal household, the Archbishop Janus Wozniak, that before the Pope passed, he asked for Tremblay, this one, for him to resign before the Pope died. But unfortunately, Tremblay did not do that. While Stanley Tucci's character, I'm going to bring this up again, Bellini, is telling his supporters that he is trying to not let the other person, Tedesco, for him not to win, because he has more traditionalist views and would set back the church for any number of years. And all of them are surprised. And initially, Lawrence himself is surprised when there is a last-minute arrival of the Mexican-born Archbishop Vincent Benitez, who the Pope has declared Cardinal Impectore in Kabul, in Afghanistan. And this picture I do not have, but he becomes important as the story goes along. And so the preparation goes along. Everyone is assembled. And for some time, nobody reaches the 2/3 majority that is necessary to win. Although several people do have a lead to win, like Adeyemi from Nigeria. While the other two, Bellini and Lawrence, because what Lawrence did not think would happen is that he gets a few votes. And he's split by this because he is the dean of the cardinal. So Lawrence is split by this because he's the dean of the College of Cardinals, but he is still able to vote. To be voted for, I mean. And also, this, interestingly, is another parallel with the movie Angels and Demons, where by the end, I'm gonna have to look this up for just a second. I'm gonna give you the information from Angels and Demons 2. So near the end of that movie, they're all voting for themselves to ensure the process is respected and they can stall it out while the whole thriller aspect of that movie can conclude. And an important factor that I have to give you for Angels and Demons is that there's a lot of action that is absolutely non-existent in the movie Conclave. I'm looking this up as fast as I can. Give me a second. Here. I'm gonna skip over this for just a second. So to make this easier for myself, I'm just gonna keep more to the conclave part. So there is the democratic vote happening to become the new pope among the candidates. And so Thomas Lawrence, the dean of the College of Cardinals, has his own assistant, Raymond O'Malley, and he learns that this new cardinal, Vincent Benitez of Cabo, is. I'm gonna rephrase. So, Lawrence's assistant, Raymond O'Malley, discovers that the late Pope has paid for this new cardinal to be flown over to Geneva for a medical appointment that said cardinal then declined to do. On the second day of the papal election, I will call it, there is an altercation between this man, Adeyemi from Nigeria, and a nun sister, Shanumi, who has been transferred, by the way, from Nigeria to Rome. And something happens in the cafeteria where she drops a tray. And there's this moment where everyone is looking around and trying to figure out what is happening. And the dean of the College of Cardinals, Thomas Lawrence, asks to speak with Shanumi, and she confirms something that should not happen to the cardinal from Nigeria, in that she had an illicit relationship with the man that led to the birth of his son. And when Lawrence confronts Adeyemi about this, he unfortunately has to confirm it. And this basically means that he can no longer be a good candidate to become Pope. And this makes the other candidates, Bellini and Tedesco, go in between who to vote for. And so Stanley Tucci's character, Bellini, decides that he has to back the other one, Tremblay. And then it turns out, as Lawrence discovers, while working with the sister Agnes, who is the head caterer and housekeeper, that the same man, Tremblay, had arranged for Shanumi's transfer to Rome. And when Tremblay is confronted by Lawrence, he claims that he did so at the Pope's request. And Lawrence is a little shook by this and unsure of what to do exactly, but he ultimately decides to go into the sealed apartment of the Pope, and there he finds in a hidden panel on the bed that the Pope was sleeping in documents that indicate that Tremblay was paying cardinals to vote for him during this electoral process. And then Lawrence confronts Bellini again. I'm reading here. How to say this? So he tries to make sure to Lawrence Bellini tries to make sure to Lawrence that he did not know about this, and this sparks an argument between them. Okay. But then the next day, on the first day of the election for a new pope to be sometimes the worst, folks. So, on the third day, they exposed Tremblay's actions in the cafeteria of the place where they're doing this. I'm gonna bring up briefly what happened in our real world. We see this happening in the Sistine Chapel, but there's all kinds of areas where we see things happening in this movie, like the cafeteria and the kitchen, and then also other places like the apartments of all the cardinals. And so this takes place in the cafeteria again, and so Tremblay is confronted by this, and he actually needs to remove himself from the contest. And so the race becomes even tighter between Bellini and Tedesco. And Lawrence, while impartial, agrees to stand against Tedesco because he would take the church so many years back. And then when they're doing the next ballot, Lawrence decides to vote for himself while he has been slowly getting some votes himself. But here he decides for the first time to vote for himself. But before he can do so, there is an explosion outside that bursts into the Sistine Chapel, and he is rocked back by the blast. But luckily nobody, after everyone is taken care of and led back to their apartments, he gets the assessment from his assistants, and so the Sistine Chapel has been damaged by this explosion, unfortunately. And they learn that this was only one of a couple of suicide bombings that are occurring throughout Europe. And then the other guy, Tedesco, is basically advocating for a religious war for Christianity against Islam. But then the new guy, Benitez, from his archbishop. Sometimes these movies have such long words, folks, that it's hard to get them through my mouth and say them properly. So this new guy, Vincent Benitez, who is effectively Mexican born but has his... I'm gonna have to look this up for just a second. Diocese. Anyway, so Benitez, born somewhere else, but has his church, his local church in Kabul, in Afghanistan. He comes into play at this moment, and he is arguing against the violence, and he reads everyone the lesson, basically, that they need to stop warring against each other because they are all on one side. They have their religious mission, and so the voting starts to resume, and eventually he is chosen as the new pope. And then the college, well, he is overwhelmingly elected. He gets the 2/3 of the votes. And he accepts that he has won. And the College of Cardinals, the Dean, Lawrence, has to ask him what name he wants for his papacy. And he chooses for Innocentius. And initially, Lawrence is also very agreeable to this. But then again, he is pulled aside by his assistant, O'Malley, to discuss further what the visit to Switzerland in Geneva was that Benitez was initially going to go to. And then this all starts to a wicked twist where Cardinal Benitez has a confrontation, a more elaborate conversation, more than a confrontation with Lawrence, and he tells him that he was born with the genitals from the other sex. But he was unaware of this until an appendectomy revealed them to him. And so the medical procedure that he was about to get in Geneva was for a laparoscopic hysterectomy. And he ultimately did decide not to do it, believing that he should be as God has made him. And so that is where the sort of little epilogue takes us, from Lawrence going through the Vatican grounds. By the way, little sideway here, the old Pope had something with turtles, and he had a place for all the turtles to be around. And one of those turtles ends up in the Sistine Chapel, and Lawrence brings it back to where it is. And while this is happening, you see flashes of all the places of the Vatican grounds, and he's listened to everyone cheering on the new Pope and his incredible win. And the movie ends when he goes to his room, he opens up his window, and he observes a couple of young nuns coming out into a courtyard below his apartments, where they are eagerly chattering. And that is the end of the movie. And so I want to say that this, I have to mention, it was not usually the kind of movie I watch, but the fact that there was so many, there was so much applause and celebration for it, that I feel like I had to watch it. And I'm glad I did, because it is a good movie. It is a good thriller in the sense that, and normally when I think of thrillers, I think of the very action-heavy kind. But this was also a very good movie when it came more about the relationships and such, the secrets, the drama, the twists and turns of everything. And that twist at the end really takes you off guard and allows you to sit with it for a moment. And I'm not going to get into the politics of that when it comes to a real world justice movie. And I am glad they went that route. By the way, and maybe I should have said this at the beginning, but I'm saying it now. This is an adaptation of a book from years ago by a man named Robert Harris. And that was my fun if you just heard it. And so it's interesting how, once again, we have an adaptation. Same thing with Angels and Demons, as I brought it up before. I realized maybe I should not have done it, or maybe I did. In any way, is an interesting take when it comes to these kinds of movies, and with how strangely relevant it was recently when it came to our real world. In effect, I heard that, and I hope I heard this from a good source, that apparently the new Pope, our real Pope, had watched this movie in preparation for the new Conclave, for him becoming one. And so I want to end on a good note here, that we are all, well, I'm going to cut it short, not get too political here. In anyway, I've been Frederik. This is the FWX podcast. Thank you very much for listening and watching me explain this movie with the help of some pictures as well. And I hope to see you in the next video. You can also like and subscribe, and you can comment if you want. I've been Frederik for the FWX podcast. Thank you so much for listening and watching. See you in the next video. Goodbye.